Hi, so I'm going to try and do a numerical sort in JavaScript. For this one is a sorting algorithm. Sorting algorithm is an algorithm that puts elements of a list into an order. For this example, this is an example of an ascending numerical order. So this one doesn't really matter that much. This one's just the index HTML. So we'll just click on this, and this is what I want to show, I suppose. So I have 6 boxes over here, or input boxes. These ones are only limited to numericals, and also I have set it so it does not go it does not use negative values by using min equals 0 attribute on an input. And the way this one works is whenever I click or change the values within these input boxes, it will call in and use the function apply the change that was added into the input boxes. So this one is an ascending comparison based algorithm, or sorting algorithm, called selection sort. It takes in the least and highest value in the list and then arranged into an array with a specific sorting order, ascending or descending. So the way selection sort works is that it grabs, for example, I have a value of 1 and 6. It grabs these values and compares it to each other, and then it grabs the least amount of value and puts it first in a new array, and then it will go through the unsorted array once more and grab the next value. So if I were to lower this value over here, have a number which we'll just use that for now, and put number 2 in the first text box, which will also show in the unsorted array that it is still in the first index or 0 of the array, and it is now moved to the furthest index, which I believe is 5, once it is sorted. So if I were to add another number that is not in order on the third input box, which is 3, 2 is now moved to the second last index of the sorted array, and 3 is now in the last index of the sorted array. And also, basically, I can just change these values, and the this array over here will remain unsorted, and this will be sorted just right underneath the unsorted values. So basically it grabs, let me just add number 2 in here, and this will be in ascending order, and there's another number 2 over there. I will have to change that one to number 4, I suppose. Okay, so Now, in the first index, which is 0, now number 4 is over here. Number 5, number 3, 2, and 1, and 7. And that is correct if unsorted. And once sorted, number 1 will be in the first index, 0. Number 2 will be in the second index, which is 1. And then number 3, number 4, number 5, and then number 7. So let me just move number 4 here, and then change this one to number 7, and it is now sorted, and number 7 is now also on the first index, and then number 4 is now on the last index of the unsorted array. So the way that I can explain how this one works on HTML and JavaScript is that firstly I created or typed in these inputs over here to the left, which takes in the type of number. And then next is setting the minimum value only to 0, so it does not use negative values. Now it is possible to also sort negative values, but I chose not to, just for this example. And then I also added a name and an ID, and the class for these inputs should all be the same, but the name and the number is different for each individual input. This one is number 1, number 2, input number 3, input number 4, input number 5, input number 6. And then when the values change, that's why I added onChange as an attribute. Once you type in onChange and have not created the function apply change yet, that one I will show that one a little bit later. This one is not that important at the moment. This one's just a style sheet. Kind of obvious about that. Just a few other lines. Okay, so let me move to apply change now. So this is the function that gets called whenever change happens in one of the input boxes. And apply change, I believe, is all the way at the bottom. Function name, apply change. This function filters the array, then applies the change values in the inputs. Filters or sorts the array. Also filters, kind of sorts the array, then applies the changed values in the inputs to the HTML text. Unsorted array and sorted array. Unsorted array is right below where the input boxes have been typed in. This one is the unsorted array, which is currently empty and will be empty initially, and then also the sorted text, and the name and the ID is set accordingly. Now sorry about the loud mouse and keyboard. So apply change. First off is apply a type in a variable that is an array. Now this array will hold any kind of value. It can also hold in a string or a character or a text. So I had to be kind of specific in some of the lines, so it uses numerical values other than text and character values. So, and then the function getArray from input gets the values for the array. Then the filter array will filter array and is then applied to the array local variable. So I will move in to show what filter array and get array from input is. So first off is filter array, which is right over here. Filter array is another function. I prefer splitting functions and kind of tasks and lines of code in functions in order for me to read it kind of more properly, and in order for me to find lines of codes that may possibly have errors or cause any errors and whatnot. And so basically it just makes it a little bit more easy to read for me. So filter array function accepts the parameter of an array, and then this function creates a local variable which is called filtered array, which will then be returned by the function once the array inputted inside the filter array parameters is filtered. The way this function filters the array is it removes all the values that are 0 or less, or possibly even non-numerical. So it creates a loop that is according to the array parameter length. And then if the current value in the array is not empty or not a 0 or negative value, the value within the array in the current index is pushed into the filtered array. This will loop as much as this array holds, as much as the values contained in this array is, or how many values or integers, numbers are there in this parameter array. And then once that's done, it is returned. The filter array is returned to wherever you called this function at, which was the array. And then in order for me to get the values from the input boxes, I have this function called getArray from input. So the function name is getArray from input, returns integer array or float, or I'm not quite sure at this point. Description: this function iterates through the HTML elements with the number ID, number 1, number 2, number 3, 4, 5, 6, and etc. if I wanted more input boxes. Code lines that loop 6 times with the index loop. This one is specific for this HTML code. So this loops 6 times, which is because there are 6 input boxes. And then for each loop, it goes here first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and then lastly this input box right over here. So it basically uses document.getElement by ID number plus whatever current index this for loop is at, adding 1 because I did not start with a number 0 for the ID, and then grabs the value within that input, and then that value is then parsed or read as a float or a number, or converted into a float or a number, which is then inserted into the current index or in the array within the current index of this loop. And then this array is now returned, which means this array, that get array from input, basically this grabs the numbers from here and stores it into the local variable array. But firstly, it grabs the values, and then that array, which is contained over here, then gets filtered and removes all other values that are empty or 0. So the next step is to apply this array, or add the values in this array into the unsorted array text, which is over here. And then the next thing is the sorted array gets called, or there's a line here that uses the sorted array and then applies, and the function numerical sort is called on the array. Local variable array is sorted by the numerical sort function, then the return value is applied to the sorted array HTML text, which is over here. So now we are going to look at numerical sort. Numerical sort takes in a parameter of an array, numerical array specifically, and then I added in a try and catch lines of code, which stops or displays creates an error, displays an error that will specify or tell you that it has an invalid array length or values. Array must contain numerical values. This just makes sure that you are using numerical values for the numerical sort. and then 3 local variables are created. Variable.length stores the value of the initial length of the numerical array within the parameter, and then an array called sorted array is defined, and also an array called low and underscore high array is also defined. Now a while loop is now created or typed in, while the length of the array to return is not equal to the length of the given array. The given array is the parameter array, which is numerical array, and the length of the array to return, which is sorted array, is not equal to the length of numerical array. It loops while the sorted array does not contain the same length or the same numbers. It loops while this is not filled in yet. And use the function getLeast and high array values on the given array and apply it to the local variable low, high. Low, high is the variable array over here that was defined, and then a function getLeast and highest array values is called on the numerical array. This function, which is over here, gets the least and highest values within that array and its parameter. It gets least and high array values, parameter numerical array, returns integer array on the index 0 is the least value, on index 1 is the greatest value within that array. This function iterates through the array, storing the least and greatest values in respective local variables. So variables low and high is now defined, and it doesn't have to kind of look like this. It can be any number, but I just wanted to use the first index on both local variables. So and then it loops as much as how many values are in the numerical array, and then it checks if the least value is greater than the current value, which is the index on the current index of the array. If the least value is greater than the current value, which is this, and this is the current least value, which is the first index, which is 0. If this is greater than the current value, it will apply the current value as the least value, meaning the value contained in the current value is less than the one that we currently have stored within this function. And then the next step is to check the high value, or the highest value. If the greatest value is less than, or to find the highest value, sorry. If the greatest value is less than the current value, apply the current value as the greatest value. If the current value within the array is greater than the value which is stored in the high local variable within this function. It is then, the current value is then applied to the high local variable. And once that is done, where the high value and the highest value and the lowest value is found, this function will now return a new array which contains the lowest value in the first index, which is 0, and the highest value found in the second index, which is 1, and returns it as a new array. So we'll move back down here, and that value is now stored in the local variable low_high. So the next step is to push the least value to the array to return at index 0. Meaning this wasn't properly commented, and I might have to change that. Actually, or not. I might as well just explain it. Basically, we now have the lowest or the least and the highest value within the array. Then because of this, we can get the lowest value and push it or add it or append it to the sorted array, which is now going to be in whatever index or next index, whatever next index this value will receive or will use. So next thing is use function remove array least value on the given array and apply it to the given array to remove the least value. So this function is now called towards the numerical array. That was called in the parameter, and this function will use the numerical array, which is over here. This function accepts possibly unsorted numerical array with returns array with the least value removed. It basically returns an array with the least value within this array removed. The variable to store the least value and the array to return is typed in, which is called low. And then I created another function that I already talked about this one, I think. Yes, to get least and highest array values. This specific line over here is for this function, and will call in to find the least and the highest values within the numerical array. And this will return an array. This will be an array over here. And then within this array, on index 0, oh, sorry about that. On index 0, the value within this index is now applied to variable low. So the next step is using this least value, which we are going to remove from the array, numerical array is to use splice or remove the least value from the array. Splice basically removes so using splice on numerical array, this value over in this value, which is low, or the index of this value, which is low, the index of in this array is spliced. So basically this function, or this function for the array splice takes in the index that you want to remove, and this is how many values or variables within the array you are going to remove, which is only one, which is the least amount within the array. Now numerical array is now then with the least value within the numerical array removed. The numerical array is now returned with the least value removed from the given array. Now moving back down here again. Now this will not have the least value anymore, which is also this. There is kind of no need for me to make this kind of longer or use another function. You can also do is just use this line of code over here. Actually, you can just do splice 1 and then numerical array dot index of low, high, 0. So there is no need for that function. So there will be no need for that function anymore, but I just chose to split it just to make it kind of easier for my brain to remember. And now when the sorted array is now filled with values that are sorted in ascending order and now has the same length as the numerical array within the parameter, this sorted array is now returned by the function numerical sort, which is now going to be used by the element sorted array within its HTML code. So to try this one out, hopefully it still works the same. Yes, and yeah, it still works exactly the same way as expected, with the function removed, changed, or that line of code changed. And as you can see, it works quite well, I suppose. So yeah, that is how this version of a selection sort works for me. And yeah, so I will leave a link for the code hopefully these lines of codes are readable for basically anyone, I suppose, that would want to view this. It would be very likely that it would still be me viewing that kind of content for me to remember these kinds of stuff. And basically that's it. I have no other intentions, I suppose. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, this is just basically an example of a selection sort in JavaScript. There's different ways to code in sorting algorithms, but I chose JavaScript, which is easier for me to remember and kind of code. I don't know, that depends, I suppose. Yes, and that is pretty much it. Thank you for watching, and have a great morning, afternoon, or night. Thank you.